I'm always, writing books, and so I have my third book is out, and just about to finish my fourth book, which is on the pre-A, and it's like a book of kind of like meditations. And so I'm kind of
Wow.
excited to talk about that because it's like um, where the other books are kind of like formulaic. I was able to talk about like other things that kind of more maybe interest me more than like just introducing people to spirits. So yeah, I think it's kind of nice, and that book will have my art in it as a thing. So it's kind of crazy to think because I didn't know I could write books until I started doing that, and that the
Okay.
art thing. So
Now you're making all these beautiful paintings.
yes, so yeah, I kind of just will fill it up with as many things as I can kind of possibly fit. Kind of, But yeah.
That's amazing. So what are all your books? Good. Why don't you walk people through the different books that you've done?
So my first book was on Legba, and kind of talking about Papa Legba and the role that he plays in Vodou, and kind of how to interact with him as like from a outsider's perspective, or from an outsider's stance, I guess, trying to have some kind of entrance into Vodou. Then I wrote a book on the Gede, because the Gede are the spirits of the dead, and so everyone likes those guys, right? So I figured that'd be a good one to follow it up with, because everybody, while the other Loa might be hard to contact, everybody's got the Gede and Legba, so I figured that'd be a good one. Then my third book is on Kuzan, and kind of the Native American contributions to Vodou, and talk about Kusanzaka, and a little bit about Anakona, who's the last Taino cacique of, of Haiti, and kind of how she's interacted with in Vodou, and just kind of like it's more has more history in it than the other two books, and then my fourth one's coming out, and I'm really excited about that. I'm already working on the fifth one, so
Is it also on Haitian Press or
oh yeah, they'll all be on Haitian Press, yeah,
very
and
nice?
yeah,
I love the
but
first two. You just talking about it made me realize I don't think I have the third one. I'm going to have to order that.
yeah, I think the third one's pretty good because it was a little challenging to write, because it's like I tried to write, I was like not necessarily a narrative, but talking about history as opposed to just facts, and like here's there, this is that and that this, but it was I think it was really good. Each one of these books, it challenges me, right? It's like to kind of write it different, like not write it differently, but maybe it gets better each time. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's a whole process go writing a book, especially books
yeah.
about these kinds of subjects.
It's really like can be really challenging because you're writing about a thing that's like you're not trying to like I keep on telling myself not to accidentally like Church of England voodoo by like creating a book for something that there isn't necessarily a book for, but it's kind of like I think it's really necessary because people, it's how do I say, it's like people just don't have the time to ask, they don't have the time to listen, but so they can carry this book around, I guess, right?
Yeah, or they don't know who to ask. Maybe there's no one in their area and they can get a book from anywhere in the world, online.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So not
That's actually kind
everyone
of
has a great voodoo priest friend that they can talk to.
yeah, right. I guess they don't. It's kind of it's I think it's kind of interesting that my books are translated into Polish before they were translated into like in Spanish, and I kind of
Oh,
wonder, kind of like what kind of voodoo thing is happening in Poland. That
that's super interesting.
yeah,
I have to
but
connect with those people. We'll have to find them.
yeah, right. Um, but it's been kind of neat connecting with different like non-English speakers or people that are just really not connected to like Haiti or North America and in that way, and kind of seeing where their interest is or what drew them to that tradition. Because I mean, people hear about it obviously, but but it's like the chances to really interact with it, I guess, are really limited. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also interesting, like the kind of journey these traditions have taken, like from Africa to the Caribbean to Haiti, North America, and then over to Europe in this way,
Right. I even think about that even in its kind of its journey now with sort of like coming into like, North America, like the rest of North America, I guess, and like what that will look like, just like it's, in its entrance into Europe and elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the spirits, yeah, they want to get around.
Yeah, definitely.
I forget
It's
that too, because growing up in Miami, the voodoo and Santeria have always been around, but I forget that like even the rest of the US, it's not that way. It's not so common everywhere.
yeah. I was recently in Birmingham for one of my godkids is, and I was seeing how that city is really ripe for voodoo. Like they really want it to be there, and are willing for it to be there in whatever way it can be, which is really interesting for like that particular city, with its history and all. Um, but yeah, there's different places I guess that are just sort of opening up to that.
Yeah, I saw your pictures in Birmingham in the museum. They have a really good museum there. I was
Yeah,
really
me too.
surprised.
Yeah, me too. I was just sort of like holding my breath, hoping that it would be at least a little bit interesting. But there's a lot of really wonderful things there.
Yeah, I was really surprised. And they seemed to be really like trying to make sure they were like including different perspectives and being multicultural and like, not just displaying like the same old art. They seem to be trying to, at least when I was there, the exhibition had a lot of like modern artists and yeah, it was really great. A lot of people of color showing work.
Yeah, when I was there, they had like Hindu art, like different like sculptures and different like photo like collages. It's really neat.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very cool. How did you get
You
into
know,
Vodou in the first place? Or what were you going to say?
I was listening to the talk that I did, that however long ago, and thinking where I was then and like where I'm at now. Where then I was like, I was not even thinking that I would be doing a conzo. I'm about to do my first conzo as a priest, in March, and I'm really excited about that. And uh, I'm about to. It's just really wild because I don't know. I don't think I thought I would ever get there, as like a thing. But it was I'm really excited for that and kind of excited to kind of what's the word? I like bring some like elevation to Vodou, like I have a lot of really good people that are about to take leadership roles there and that want to interact with their communities, and like bring voodoo to people as opposed to just sort of like it being like maybe a window dressing or like the thing that they do, but really wanting to impact people with it. So I'm really excited to see what the future holds for that.
That's
So
very cool. Yeah, for people listening, yeah, the talk that you gave at the first Psychoanalysis Art in the Occult conference in London in 2016. Wow, that's 6 years ago. That was episode 192. So if you want to listen to that, definitely check it out. That was on the 7 layers of the Vodou soul.
it's yeah, it's really. And that was the first. That's I think the first piece I ever published.
Yeah, you published in the Feminist Wolf #9. It's a great
Yeah,
piece. And you also gave the talk at Morbid Anatomy when we were in person in New York. And now I'm doing a
that's right.
Morbid Anatomy series online once a month. So you'll have to come and do a talk there too.
Nice.
Very
I'm
nice.
down. um, yeah, it's just I guess kind of things look very different for at least Vodou from where I'm standing. Like like having conversations with people about not just doing things in Haiti for the sake of it being in Haiti, but also opening up to different locations in the world for people that can't travel to Haiti for political reasons or for what have you. But so that's really kind of interesting because for the past forever, you've had to interact with Haiti as like you must go there. And so to see, maybe the idea that, looking at the world or the earth as being blessed and being sacred as opposed to like this particular political boundary being sacred, and not asking any further questions is really refreshing.
Yeah, I feel like things are moving in that direction towards like making things more accessible, like you said, because I feel like humanity and the earth really needs this knowledge, these kinds of knowledge. I'm reading this book, or I just finished this book that Gary Lockman, who was also of that first conference, wrote called The Lost Knowledge of the Imagination. And he said that occulted knowledge has been excluded knowledge. And that's what's like makes it occult. And the occultists often think of it like we keep it hidden on purpose, like it's hidden knowledge. And of course, for reasons, it was hidden in for reasons, political reasons as well, because people were oppressed. But also it's been excluded, intentionally by the powers that be and not accepted as knowledge, and that knowledge needs to come back because it's a big part of what we're doing here as humans, it needs to be brought back in order for our survival, basically.
Yeah, that was a really big part of why I've wanted to the class I did yesterday with Big Liz Conjure. I was talking just about Vodou to people without having to necessarily give the preface of understanding that slavery was a thing or that different kinds of oppression were things. So it was for people of color only, which is like a kind of a new format for me in teaching things because I like to be inclusive. I like to include people who have different things, but it was nice to be able to do that in that space. And it is like a huge foundation because as far as like Black people in America, we built our foundation, our spiritual foundation with the church, and I think that's really kind of that's proven to be maybe not such a great thing for us, right? And it's how do I say? It's like it's better than a foundation of nothing, something that at least maybe it might be like not totally understood or be able to be understood in a full way, but be able to understood in a personal way could be a lot better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk a little bit about what brought you, like your journey toward Vodou, or you could even talk about the bigger kind of political aspects as well and how it did kind of help people survive during slavery and things like that for people that might not know?
I mean, with my personal journey with Vodou, it really was connected to kind of not survival in the same way as people who were like surviving the atrocities of like slavery and whatnot, but it was survival in the sense of how to find my identity in a world where I didn't really have an identity, or like as a biracial man, my living with my mom's parents, she's a white European lady, it's like that world was new for me as much as it was my world for them, where they didn't really know how to interact with me with certain things, and it was made for a very challenging kind of upbringing, right? And having no like not a fixed identity, but just sort of like an identity that's kind of attached to one half of myself. And so Vodou showed me, or was able to give me, a kind of a deeper relationship with myself, because it gave me something to kind of look at that was like I have a value outside of a particular notion, or outside of like the usefulness of a particular kind of people, or for in a particular kind of way, if you kind of, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
totally. Like one that they had one worldview, and your value is not based on that worldview.
Right. And I think that's really like kind of like the unique thing with Vodou is because, when looking, because really all these different traditions are just cultural ways of talking about and explaining the things that are really universal. It's like everybody's got a, deity of water or deity of air, right? These things. And it's just the cultural costume that we decorate those kind of concepts in, that is, what makes them kind of unique for in their individual, ways of being. But with Vodou, it was kind of like, I mean, it isn't kind of like, it actually is. It's like everybody is at the table. Every different group of people that was brought to Haiti, and that was accounts for most of the people that are also brought to the United States. So as a, for people that may not know their ancestry in that very direct way, it was like a really seemed like a really good choice, and it was. You know, I think I was talking to one of my guide kids the other day about this, where it's like when you don't have stories about yourself and like a kind of like a not yourself, but people that look like you, that are not just in like this self-sacrificing stories of like not to say that the people that actually did things in this particular country for the advancement of Black people weren't enough, but it is to say that it's like, if everything you look towards is a self-sacrificing symbol, or like a individual that like, suffered in order to make a thing happen, versus like, having a really mythological character that was able to do or accomplish all kinds of things, as like a, whether it's an icon that you start, like, you like, I don't know, you learned when you're very young. It's just, it's just to say that if you don't have those things, you don't have a thing that maybe looks like you, or acts like you, or interacts with the kind of the people that you do, it kind of may leave you in a strange place. And it's to say that Vodou provides the answer to that for people that might be a question,
And it's wonderful, and like you said, it's been wonderful to kind of see your trajectory and how much you've like blossomed over these years. You're such a like warm and caring person who's, yeah, so generous, and it's perfect. It makes perfect sense that you have reached the level where you have god kids and are helping other people on their path.
It's definitely surreal. It's like, I'm like, also learning too, so we're all learning together. But it's like it's kind of nice though. Well, shoe on the other foot, perhaps. It's like, I try to be helpful for most people in most cases, but it's actually nice to be helpful in a particular way that I know that what I'm doing is actually helpful. Yeah, it's yeah, it's really shocking, because sometimes like I don't know, I'm talking to like, people who have other lives, other things that they're doing, and they're making, not only a tremendous effort to understand, but also like, making the time for these like kind of not necessarily archaic, but it's not part of our, our mainstream or regular culture for Americans, or for Black people or Black Americans, right? It's a Haitian thing. It's very it's nice to be able to impart that to people in a meaningful way, and for them to also like just value the meaning of it.
Absolutely. So you've been doing classes and you give readings too, yeah?
Oh yeah, always doing readings. It's like the reading thing has kind of been really interesting, because I used to do tarot all the time, but now people want to hear from the Loa all like just like more often. And so it's been this year especially, it's been really me taking a step away from tarot, even though I still offer it, but no one really asks for that anymore. So I've been with these playing cards. And to be honest, with playing cards, like whether it's the attachment to like, you know, I get these things at the corner store, or is it the, or whether they're the it's like they're hard to keep in the same way as like, you know, like a tarot deck. So I have lots of different playing card decks now, and there really is a difference, I suppose. But it's really fun to be able to kind of step outside of my usual space, but still interact with the kind of materials that I interact with, you know, cards, divination. Yeah. It's like especially with Vodou, because it doesn't really, like, you know, divination is where it has its voice, and it's able to communicate the particular values that it's, you know, that it communicates. And it's just nice to be able to, you know, it's one thing to think to yourself, like, yeah, this is a helpful thing for people, but then when you deliver that information to someone and it is helpful, or, you know, however it is taken, is good. It's good. Yeah. Yeah. I guess also too with divination, so I'm teaching my first class on how to read the cards within the context of Vodou. And I really don't teach tarot, and I don't teach those things because that's what I do. And it's always been a kind of like a unspoken rule of mine not to teach the thing that I do. But I guess I'm doing that now. And it's kind of neat because I didn't know, and it actually was experiencing this in my writing and experiencing this in some of my like presentation of my classes, where there were things that I was holding on to that were other people's stuff. You know, like when I was coming up in the tradition and on on Facebook and the internet, there were like kind of like what's the word, like slogans that you had to kind of like, you know, throw around in order to like, you know, be accepted by, you know, these people who were interacting with the tradition, right? And so like I've been looking at those and thinking about them, and seeing where those things have been real, or why people were saying those things or implementing them, and realizing that in most cases it's like people don't know what they really don't know, and there's a lot that we don't know as far as like, you know, Americans go, as with the history of like Africa as a whole, let alone like the history of the slave trade, and what that looked like, you know, not only in the States but elsewhere in the Americas, and even in Africa. And so you know, I was looking at this paper the other day from Max Beauvoir's daughter. Her name's not coming to me at the moment. Rachel Beauvoir. She wrote this paper about the 21 nations of Vodou, and she kind of organized some of the Loa and the nations that they came from, which sometimes they don't add up to how we would look at them as far as someone who understands how those spirits are lined up in the tradition. And you know, having learned a lot of things that are not related to Vodou but related to Vodou, you know, just like history and, you know, like the ways that people exchange ideas and things like that. You know, it's like the stuff that people said was, you know, oh, it's like nonsense or it doesn't make any sense, was really just stuff that we just didn't understand at all, and that people were very quick to just sort of like, you know, dismiss as being like really goofy or not useful, when really it was just people just didn't understand what it was that they were talking about. And so it's like being able to share ideas that were at one point kind of seen as like forbidden, or stuff you can't really interact with and being taken seriously, is really nice, because it was unintentionally kind of locking me up. You know, it's like I would be writing, like I was writing the next book that I'm writing is about Zilifreda, and I was writing about how, because the tagline that we would say, right, is like, you know, Zilifreda is not Oshun, right, and Oshun is not Zilifreda, which is true, they're not. But I was writing a paper on how they were not the same, And every time I was writing about how they were not the same, I was writing about how they were the same. And it was like, and I had to like stop. I had to think about what I was doing, because because I knew, at least in my mind, that I was like, I know what I'm trying to write, but how is that I'm not able to, like, when I put the words together, they just don't come together, because sometimes it's deeper than what people understand. You know, it's like, it's just, there is a connection, despite the connection not being, you know, like a one for one, like, or a, you know, direct, you know, carbon copy of a thing, but that there are, like, you know, things that are similar because of stories, or because of how, you know, folklore, or the way that people shape how their gods interact with, you know, the world and themselves. So it's been just an interesting journey in that regard, just trying to like come to a place of like, just, you know, like, where are we at? Where am I at? Where is like, you know, what's actually real about these things versus what was the thing that was like kind of like told to us, or, you know, that we learned because it was easier to explain it that way than to, you know what I mean, get into the nitty gritty of it. But I think it's kind of time for all that, you know.
Absolutely. No, I've been thinking about that a lot. One, like you said, like some things are kind of beyond words, where you can phrase the words over and over again, but it doesn't really capture what you're trying to say, because it's something you kind of have to understand from experience, you know. Sometimes it's
Right.
hard to capture in words. And also, like, these people that have been writing about this, say, in the past, you know, they're, first of all, they're coming from a different worldview, where they're looking at something from the outside, and then they're basically filtering it through their worldview to explain it, but they actually have no clue what people are doing, you know. And if they write something off, it's because they don't understand it. But then these things have been written in these like academic books and history books as if they're true, and yeah, they're not. So then people have referenced them over and over, and they've been, the same things have been in more and more books, and then you find in so many books, well, it must be true, but it's just like the original thing someone wrote, you know, they didn't understand what they were doing. I think about this all the time with like a great example that people can understand pretty easily is like when you go to a museum and you're looking at all these artifacts, and people, they're totally out of context. Like a lot of sculptures and artifacts in museums are like ritual artifacts, and then people just look at them and they look at like, oh, they're carved this way, or the angles, or it's from this period, but they like the entire like ritual aspect and spiritual aspect that it was created for is completely removed, you know. So how do you really understand what you're looking at if you've taken that out of it, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a huge thing, because you're only interacting with it from the lens of the people that are interacting with it as a second hand or third hand, you know, person. It's not from, you know, not curated by the people that, you know, interact with those things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing. People are writing about it who aren't practitioners, you know. So they're
Right.
just looking at it through this kind of like academic lens, but they don't practice magic. They don't practice these traditions, so they don't really understand what it's about. And just like the aspect of looking at it, um, how far off are the people that are looking at things that are from like totally other countries, other continents, other eras, you know, like we look at like what people think they understand what was going on in Egypt 5,000 years ago, you know, like give me a break. You have no clue, you know?
Right. It's so yeah, it's like, you know, being able to write about those things, and being able to kind of put, like, not just putting my word on a thing, but also being conscientious about that, from having been told stuff that isn't a thing, and having had to interact with it like it was. But you know, I am, you know, very extremely grateful though for the fact that I've been really fortunate to be able to have studied different things, and to have been impacted by different traditions and stuff, to be able to have that kind of scope though. You know?
It's very true too. And that's the point that it's a living tradition. You're practicing a living tradition. And of course, it evolves and, you're bringing it to a current day audience and current day practitioners.
It's I think when people talk about things being living tradition, they still think about it as being in like a glass dome of like, that even though the fact that it's being interacted with by people, inside of, the same, hemisphere, but with outside of the culture, you know what I mean? Outside of the thing is like still, that's a part of its transformation, right? It's part of its growth. That like, people's desire to adhere or stick to tradition where, that really wasn't something that was afforded for most people that were actually interacting with these things, where they had to adapt to the new world that they were existing in. And I think that's something that I guess I really do try to write about. Was like the Legba book I wrote specifically for people who weren't in the subtropics or the tropics, so like giving different plant species to use, as opposed to just tropical ones or things that you'd have to order, or because it's like if you don't interact with it like it's real, then it just becomes kind of this artificial thing. And voodoo is about nature and like living, so those things are going to be messy and strange as they are.
Yeah, life is weird.
Sure is.
No, that's great. And I think we were talking about before we were recording, but like, yeah, like moving to Sweden, I don't have access to all the things that I had access to in Miami or New York. Even like candles, jar candles, that are
Yeah.
like in every bodega everywhere. That doesn't exist here. And I want to buy Florida water once at this like new age store in Stockholm, and they wanted like $20 for it. And I was like, well, that's not happening. I was like, are you joking? So it's like that, like, yeah, I just took it for granted. Like, oh, there's gonna be, Saint candles, different colored candles, and Florida water, and all these things. Like, I've had them around forever. I don't know what life's like without them. Well, now I do. Um, so, but then I went to like we have a nice Arabic store, and they had rose water, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm using rose water now instead of Florida water, because that's what I have here. So you have to like learn to adapt those things. But it was really hard at first because I was like, what do I do without, this colored candle, like I just have to use white taper candles all the time. Like, how do I leave something burning? If I don't have a jar candle. So they're like DIY jar candles, like in a jar, and then just like make sure it stays standing up in there. And yeah, you have to be creative.
Yeah, definitely so. Even just like while I'm not in a different country, I'm definitely not in urban setting with with a robust Latin American community. And so having to adapt to using Shabbos candles and all kinds of things, which has been kind of nice in some regard. Those candles burn for a really long time. But yeah, it's like definitely adaptability is a thing that these traditions have because they've had to.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
all the things have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess with that too is also, interacting with art. And, I started painting in December. And I really did it because I wanted to interact with, I always used to buy my art from an artist. And I like doing that because I like being able to take an idea that's in my head that I can see in my mind and give it to someone else and see something that is familiar but also very different at the same time. I really like that, but I also really wanted to also have some level of control over when I want something to be a certain way. And so I I just started interacting with that not too long ago. and I paint every day now, at least once a day, and it's I guess it's more than just like a meditative habit or like a practice, but it's like it really does give me some new ways to look at like how spirits or how spiritual things are looked at. Looking at some of the first stuff I did was just with vivets and like lions, and I kind of think about because like I don't necessarily have a issue with like color theory, right? But aside from some color blindness, but it's like being able to draw things, that's like a new thing. It's like that's like a new
It's
talent.
incredible.
And
I can't believe you just started in December.
Yeah, I can't believe it either, but it's really the case. Really the case. It started the day after Christmas. And I'm just really glad that I took the leap and that I got the suggestion to even do it, because when I asked my publisher about putting art, I was asking for maybe a budget on how this, like, I'll sometimes spend I spend a lot of money on art in my books because I really enjoy art and pictures in books. It's a simple thing, but it's really great. Thinking that like, oh yeah, I'll just like all this money to get other people to put it in there, but realizing that I could just also do it myself. Yeah, glad I did it.
Yeah, no, they're amazing, and I love that you're painting while we talk.
Yes, that's the thing I do. Where I guess I just used to scroll the internet or like do like kind of mundane, mindless things, that I'm actually like being able to put my mind to something. It's nice.
It's really nice.
There's so many different things you could make in when you're like painting. Like I'm using like gouache right now. If you'd asked me what gouache was like a couple months ago, I had no idea. But it's like it's really nice. It's fun. I was working on this like last night. Still kind of working on this thing today.
Wow.
It's like for Bosu. It's kind of neat.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to get one from you.
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy thinking that too, because I never thought that people would want to interact with these things outside of just like looking at them in the book. So it's like it's really strange when people ask me for if it's for sale. I don't even know what to think sometimes. I'm like, is this for real?
It's for real.
It certainly is. But yeah, it's been really interesting. I spent the last I've been in South Carolina now for I think maybe 4 months. I spent the last 8 months or so in Texas, and kind of being in Dallas kind of land, and where like it really is true what they say, that everything really is bigger in Texas, because going from Louisiana, where everything is kind of smaller, cramped, and the available land space, when you get to Texas, everything really is really broad and wide, and there's a lot of really wonderful natural things. Got to really connect with nature there, in the same way that I'm really able to connect with nature here, and I think it's like really, it's more than just nice or good or whatever kind of simple word I can say to be able to express some of the natural things that I'm seeing and put them on a thing, and kind of and not just have a picture of it, but something that I you know what I mean. I've seen it in my mind's eye, and now I'm able to produce it. It's neat.
It's amazing, because my experience of painting is I see something in my mind's eye, and then when I make it, it's like, that is not what I was trying to do. So to be able to actually execute your vision is really special talent.
Yeah. I guess I for a long time I never thought of myself really as talented or having talents, so it's really neat to be able to interact with those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so many. So what classes are you doing next?
I am doing I'm doing a class on how to be a decent priest in Vodou, and that was a really neat class to write because a lot of people, I get a lot of communication with people that ask me how I do something, and I don't really think that I have a particular way, other than I was around people who were priests, not necessarily in Vodou, but like in other things, and so I've been able to kind of like take certain lessons away, and so to kind of be able to point people in a direction that allows them to have their self-expression in a thing, again, because people interacting with something like the tradition is under a glass veil, and they can't disturb it or impact it, but giving people at least guidelines on how they could do that for themselves, is kind of neat. And that's gotten a lot of what's people a lot of interest, right, and people wanting to take it. I am offering a class on like Voodoo 101, which is also something I've never really done before, because I've done, well, I guess I write 101 books. I've never done a class necessarily on that, where like my when I taught this leg book class one time, and at the end of the leg book class, I realized that I could have turned that one class into 3 classes, and I kind of left people kind of like in the dust, with all the kind of information that I put in that one class. So I'm starting to realize that maybe I should just start from the very beginning as opposed to in the middle.
Yeah, break it down for
And
people.
yeah, and that's going to be a really good time, because I had a really nice time talking to these people yesterday about what it meant to do some of these things, some of these rituals or these traditions, and it's also really good, even if it's not what people were looking for. It's good to be able to point out that something isn't a thing, or is a thing for people, because people are looking for something different, when that they might, just because I call it Vodou and they call it Vodou. I mean, I, for one, when I was like, a teenager, thought that I was gonna stumble into like some like like spells and kind of other stuff, and not necessarily on how to be a priest, and so um yeah, it's just really nice to be able to to present those things. And it's also really nice to present it to people that also want to actually like to do it for like the reasons that are not just like to just not for self-aggrandizement, but want to truly do something with it, which is nice. It's like for too long, I think even I was like kind of used to people just sort of mistreating Vodou, because it's kind of like the it's never had the ability to kind of air itself in the same way that like there's lots of academic papers on Ocha, there's lots of academic papers on Palo, but there's not a lot of academic stuff. Doesn't seem to really touch Vodou unless it's African Vodou, and so it's kind of like missed out on a lot of the same things. Like I realized the other day, not even the other day, like several months ago, that when I was looking at this list of plants, I was thinking to myself, this is like the same plants that are in Cuba and the same plants that are in Puerto Rico and the same plants that are in Jamaica, obviously, because it's the Antilles, right? And the fact that like, in New York, you go to the Haitian Botanica and you're dealing with plants on a different level of quality, where it's like your dried plants, because that's how Haitians interact with plant matter, versus like and you go to the botanicas that have plants and that are like Cuban, like Orisha stuff, and they have green plants. They're the same plants. It's just that one's more identifiable than the other. And it's like maybe they don't even know that they have the same plants. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
language and all kinds of different things as a barrier. And so it's been interesting kind of trying to understand that within the rest of the stuff that I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, piecing it all together through your lens, your specific lens, and your history and your experiences, you know.
Right. It's not necessarily that I have like a better answer or anything like that, but it's just maybe I have a different piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody who's coming to it will be bringing their own kind of history and experience and perspectives. And so they might see things that other people don't see, or they might miss things that other people see. You know, it's just different frameworks that we're looking through, you know. That's why it's so great to, you know, talk to different people with different cultures and different worldviews and different traditions. And like you said, like learn from all these different priests, you know, kind of how to be a priest, even if they're coming from different places.
Yeah, it's really special. It's really neat. Glad I can do it.
Yeah, and I feel like we're really lucky because we do have a lot of magical friends, and yeah, we have been fortunate to be able to kind of interact with people from different traditions and places, and somehow we all like there was a period in New York where we were all kind of there at the same time, and I didn't really realize when it was happening how special it was, but then like over here it's, you know, it's not that way. It's just me and Carl, you know. But it was really nice that everybody, you know, kind of had that kind of confluence at that time. And there's still all my friends that I talk to, and I've been trying to, you know, get everybody to come on the podcast and showcase what amazing work they're doing. And like you said at the beginning, we hadn't talked in a while. And I feel like, remember when I was in New Orleans and you recorded these songs for me? I got a reading from you and you recorded like Allegro songs and stuff. I have those and I listen to them. And so I guess that's why I feel like you're always around, because I have your singing, you know?
Yeah, you know, that's another thing I did this year too. Was I recorded a bunch of Vodou songs. That was really fun to do.
They're on SoundCloud, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah, SoundCloud.
I'll link to that. And I saw you had YouTube too. You had a couple of things on YouTube.
Yeah, I do. I have to. I definitely fell off the YouTube wagon because I went on vacation shortly after, and then I was kind of just lost the plot. And so I was like, but yeah, definitely there'll be probably more YouTube things in the future. But it's like, but the SoundCloud thing was really special because it was sort of like my testing ground. Because my next book, which is on the Prier Guinée, it has the what's the word, like a written copy of the Prier, and so I'm also going to do a sung version of it as well. That's going to be available for people too, because you know, it's like good if we have like the same information, or at least like something that's like, you know, this is like a verified thing. We can like don't have to worry about that particular step. We can worry about the next step or whatever that looks like. So that's what I'm trying to contribute this year, I guess, to the in my giving back to a thing. Yeah. I think about this thing where my grandmother used to say, and my mom used to say, like, oh, you God gave you this gift to sing, right? You know, all this thing is like, so it's just maybe a different God, right? But I feel like that's like, if I can do it, then I should do it. Yeah.
Totally. Carl always says, if you got it, flaunt it. But so you were singing since you were a little kid, because I was gonna say you have such a beautiful singing voice.
Yeah, I've been for a very long time, like in my grandmother's church, and in I went to Catholic school for a long time. I sang in their church, and so yeah, I got a lot of church stuff. So it's like right up my alley, but it's like yeah, it's I really like singing, and sometimes I forget how much I like singing until I was able to sing music I really enjoyed singing, and just in just a different way, where, you know, like recording it was really hard because there were things that only I was hearing that would be like, no, like that's not good. Or and some of those recordings aren't necessarily what I would consider very good, but they're still very good. You know, like but they're all, it's like always, it's just those things that if when you know it's there, it's a because because you're the executor of it.
Yeah,
But
exactly. You're picking things out that you're like, oh, I should have done this different, but nobody else notices that.
yeah, yeah,
I think we all
it
do
was
that to
kind of,
ourselves sometimes.
definitely. It's also just kind of neat to I kind of thinking about like a vocal style as opposed to just kind of like singing, because I did two distinct like things. Where I did one was like Vodou music and another was like Orisha music, and the Vodou music I did like in Western style like singing. It was just like what I was doing forever up until I started studying Vodou, and so it's like it was really good to go back to that and kind of see the kind of how like the different abilities or techniques that you can use in a thing. And yeah, not to say anything's one's better than the other, but it was just to say it's like it was just really cool to see my something that I never thought I would have any use for be useful in that way.
Absolutely. I found it too, like I didn't go to Catholic school, but I went to Episcopalian school, which is like the American version of Catholicism, right? And like yeah, I did that for 8 years and we had to go to church every day. And I was super into it. I was like, the girl like going down the aisle with the incense, or sometimes I'd carry the cross and I was like the helper for the priest and putting his robes on and putting the little crackers and doing readings and stuff. Like I was like pretty prominent in our class of like always doing things. I just think it's so funny that it
Yeah,
has transformed, but it's funny that you were too.
yeah. It's really kind of it's funny, especially for me, because in Vodou I'm also the ritual singer, and I was singing the masses, at these things. So it was like I'm doing the same thing. It's just different bosses, right?
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's a great
Yeah.
way. That's a great way to flip it. We're doing this now.
Yes.
I love it. So is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to? I want to make sure we go over your books and your readings and your classes. How do people find you if they want to sign up for your classes or get a reading?
Well, right now I'm teaching all my classes through biglizconjure.com, and all the classes are listed monthly there. I'm also available for like private, sessions as well, and you can book those with me on Facebook. It's probably the easiest way to get in contact with me, and Joseph Robicheaux, or on Instagram. My handle is Lacroix, Lakwa. Those are probably the best two ways to get in touch with me. But yeah, I usually have like next day availability for readings, and I'm usually open to a friendly conversation about Vodou, and so yeah.
Yeah, and I love that this is what you do. This is what you do. You make magic and teach and make art. It's great. And I think TikTok would love you.
Yeah,
If
I've
you get
definitely
on the
been very
TikTok,
hesitant
if
about
you
that.
get on the TikTok bandwagon, yeah, just based on your YouTube videos and you like talking and teaching, I think TikTok would love you. Just saying.
That's my next one.